This program is produced by Eagle Mountain Apostolic Resource Center. To find additional episodes of this program, as well as other content, visit eaglemountain.tv.
I found the devil.
The devil?
I found him.
Really? Is this him?
No.
In this wheelchair?
No. He's over here in this bucket. I kid you not. There he is. Mr. Sin!
Oh my
Not
goodness.
bothering us anymore.
And I remember her saying, okay, you're going to play Mr. Sin today. And she hands me this purple puppet with a nasty mustache. Pop the little puppet up, and literally on cue, 80 kids out there all, boo, no, God, I hate that guy. I was like, man, these guys are trained on cue. Like, I don't know if they got candy for doing that or what. But
Oh, man. They just wanted to come down on
deep
someone.
theological teaching. Deep theological teaching.
Well,
Everyone, welcome to Together We Build. My name is Chris. I'll be hosting this episode. Coming soon, the very next episode, in fact, I'm gonna not introduce it that way.
okay.
I'm gonna do something crazy. I'm gonna do something
hearing the new
more
you.
fun. All right, I'm here with Prudence. Prudence,
I think you should get a little kazoo.
I did just buy a horn. I did just buy
Yeah.
a Inspector Clouseau horn.
But that, I had to really tell him not to blow too hard on that because his eyes were kind of like pushing the limit.
Come on, it was actually fun. Okay, I'm not going to ask how you're doing, but I am going to ask you what your favorite breakfast cereal growing up. Well, actually, I'm making an assumption. Did you like breakfast cereal growing up?
We ate a lot of breakfast cereal.
Did you put apple juice on it or milk?
Apple juice?
Yeah, that's the thing. That is a thing.
Oh, it
That
is?
that is a thing.
How could that be a thing?
Let me see if it's a thing.
That you just made that up. That is
Do
totally not a
people
thing. That is
put
disgusting.
Apple
It's-
juice on
No.
cereal.
Okay,
I'm certain
so
they
the
do.
thing is that I wasn't
Fresh
a
apple
fan
juice
of
is
milk.
what works the best with cereal.
I wasn't a fan of milk. And there was a whole debacle when I was young. My dad wanted to get raw milk from a dairy. And my mother,
ahead of the times.
she didn't like it. She wanted the store-bought milk.
What?
And frankly, the raw milk was very strong tasting. It tasted like
Milky.
a cow might have produced it.
That is what you're going for. It is supposed to taste like
I
a
was
cow
probably
produced it.
like 4. This was probably between 4 and 7, I would imagine. Oh, he used to pull into the old dairy and he'd go in and get the jar of
Not
milk.
Dairy Queen.
No, and
An actual
anyway,
dairy with
I
cows.
always detested it. And it was, my mother didn't like it either, so it was a problem. He just thought it was healthier.
He was
And
right.
so he wanted to try to make his family healthier, and that's why he bought it. But in that process, I decided I was done with milk. Unless it was chocolate or strawberry or something, then I might drink it. And of course, milkshakes and things like that. I always eat stuff. Does anybody care about this?
I mean, the question was, what was your favorite cereal?
Okay,
growing
so
up?
cereal. So,
Ghostbusters?
no. We got to
Ghostbusters
pick a
was
special box of cereal
good.
on our birthdays when we were young because my dad never wanted us to eat a bunch of the sugary trash. And so we got a
Deprived.
special
I don't know how you
box
even
of cereal.
survived childhood.
And one time, I must have been about 6, I guess. And I went into Safeway and I'm like taking forever down the cereal aisle. And they had strawberry shortcake
Come
cereal.
on. Strawberry shortcake.
Yeah, it was.
Let me
I
guess.
don't know, it
Strawberry
was like-
flavored?
Yeah, of
course.
it was strawberry
Did
flavored.
it have marshmallows?
I tell you what, I made sure and hid the box from my siblings because it was my special cereal
Yeah.
and they couldn't be trusted.
Yeah.
So made sure that I hid the box.
Yeah.
And I literally waited, thought about it multiple times over through the next year.
What do you mean the next year you didn't eat it?
No, I ate the box of cereal, but I only got a special box to myself.
Oh, you only got
once
one
a
box.
year.
So you're saying after you ate it, it was so stinking good. You were thought about it all year long?
Yeah. And then I can tell you I was terribly disappointed when it was my turn for my birthday box of cereal. And I went back to Safeway, and guess what they did not have?
Strawberry shortcake.
The strawberry shortcake
It was called
cereal.
grape shortcake after that.
And of course, it was probably one of those specials, where they put it out just for a short amount of time. But I was
Just
really
during strawberry
into strawberry
shortcake land
shortcake,
days.
and so it was super special. Just the packaging and the flavor and the specialness of it all. And to this day, I'm still working through my disappointment that Safeway didn't produce any more strawberry shortcake cereal.
I am offended on your behalf at their lack of cereal production.
I don't eat cereal usually.
Discouraged.
Today.
So obviously the best cereal that's ever been made is Golden Grahams. But aside from that, the ones with marshmallows are pretty good.
They're fine until they sit in the milk for way too long, and then it's like you're
That's
eating
not a
some
problem
sort
with
of
my bowl.
pig slop.
Are you talking about Golden Grahams?
Yes,
No.
they get all melty in the milk, and it's
No.
like, oh.
It's solid goodness.
Nah.
Solid goodness. The one that gets nasty is Rice Krispies. That was such a scam. Oh my goodness. Snap, crackle, pop. They tried to make kids think it was cool. It was total mush.
Hey, they succeeded because they're still out there.
Yeah.
I like Rice Krispies.
It's money
treats,
laundering.
though.
No one actually likes Rice Krispies.
Yeah.
No,
No, I don't.
They're produced solely for moms to make Rice Krispie treats.
Yep, and
That
that's
is the
what
only
I do.
reason.
That's what
Okay.
I do.
All right, let's move on to something more important,
All
like trivia.
Okay.
Okay, here's one for you.
Yeah. This is my divider, so I
Do
can
flamingos bend their legs at the ankle or the knee?
the knee. They bend them at their weight.
So all like humans and most creatures bend them at the knee.
I think it's they
And
have
most
really
birds
high
do.
ankles, right?
High ankle. Their ankles are so high, it's the knee. No, they bend their legs
It's-
at the ankle, not the knee. Okay,
Okay,
I don't
but-
like this
but how could
division
they-
between us.
How could they have an
That's why they
ankle way
look
up
so
in
weird. No, they don't have an ankle way up there.
Okay.
Actually, wait a minute. I'm looking
See?
at pictures
Look
of
that.
flamingos.
Look at that. They're right there in the middle of their leg.
So are they saying that that's their ankle?
I don't know. Where's their knee? And their feathers? I think their knees bend
Okay,
backwards.
this is what
right?
it says. They essentially stand on tiptoe. The knees are closer to the body and are covered by feathers. This is just the first of many weird flags. Okay, so look at that. That is their
so-
ankle.
So their kneecap
So their knee is way up.
actually their
oh,
ankle.
yeah. You see their knee way up here.
That's just weird.
So their ankle is in the middle of their leg. Okay. Next time you're at a zoo and you see the flamingos, you're going to be like, what? Mind blown.
What funny creatures they are.
Okay.
Hey.
Why? Next trivia question. You ready?
Okay.
Why were roller coasters invented? And when were they invented? It's a double header
when?
question.
I'm going to say the 1950s.
Incorrect.
40s?
Incorrect.
Lower?
You mean older?
Yeah.
Yes.
20s. 10s? 1800s?
So at this rate, you're just going to keep going till you hit the number.
Yeah.
So they were invented in the 1880s by a hosiery businessman, Lamarcus Thompson.
Huh. I don't think I'd
So,
like to ride that roller coaster.
Why were they invented?
Because he wanted a stress release, obviously.
Is that your final answer?
Yeah.
They were invented to distract Americans from sin.
Sin?
Yeah. This is what he said. Hosiery businessman Lamarcus Thompson hated that Americans were tempted by hedonistic places like saloons and brothels, so he set out to straighten up one of the most immoral places he could think of, Coney Island in New York.
Interesting.
There, he built
So-
the very first roller coaster to give New York some good, clean fun away from the seedier pastimes.
Interesting. Well, that's definitely, I mean, a
So,
distraction.
do you think it's still working?
Well, yeah. People love amusement parks.
Did you love amusement parks when you were young? Did you go to amusement parks when you were young?
I think we went to Disneyland, maybe. I know we went once, maybe twice.
How could you not remember?
Well, I know we went once. I just don't remember if we went once or twice. We always did like the local fair, and they had some
That does not count.
rides that made me sick.
Those are super sketch.
Well, that was my experience anyway.
Next question. When were ice pops, or as some people like to call them, popsicles, invented? And
I don't know. A long time ago.
look, a million years.
I mean, that's got to be like. You can just
Come on now.
pick an icicle off a building and all of a
No,
sudden
no,
you have
not an
ice
icicle.
pop.
When
You mean,
were
like
ice
flavored?
pops invented?
Flavored?
Well, it just says ice pops were invented at a certain time.
I don't know. I give up already.
1905, by an 11-year-old boy named Frank Epperson, accidentally.
Accidentally.
Yes.
He
He
left
left
his
soda
juice
powder
outside?
and water outside overnight with its wooden stirrer still in the cup. The mixture had frozen in the chilly nighttime weather, and so the Epsicle was born. He sold the treat around his neighborhood and a nearby amusement park and even patented the recipe. Years later, he changed the name to Popsicle because that's what kids called their Pop's concoction. And if you like these weird facts, you don't want to miss these other. Oh, that's the pitch for the next blog post. Okay. Last one.
Okay.
Which can hold their breath longer, sloths or dolphins? Now, the fact that I'm reading this question
It's
in
got
this
to be
way
sloths.
makes it very obvious the answer is sloths, obviously.
Yeah.
By slowing their heart rates down, sloths can hold their breath up to 40 minutes.
What?
And dolphins need to come up for air after 10 minutes.
That is very strange.
That is strange. Last bonus one. A woman was elected to Congress before the women's suffrage, which is crazy, actually, if you think about it. Also, extra bonus one. Fruit Loops, since we were talking about breakfast cereal, Fruit Loops are all the same flavor. It's just the different
I
dye
can agree
colors.
with that. Like, my memory
It
is
doesn't
going back
matter
over
if you
the
could
different
agree with it.
flavors.
It's just the truth.
I know. Well, that's true. I know.
Fruit Loops
I'm
are all the
just
same
saying-
color. Or all the same flavor. They're not all the same
What
color.
a
They're
trick
different
of
colors.
the mind that they made them all different colors.
But Skittles are different flavors. And are M&Ms different flavors? Let's look it up.
No, they're not different flavors. I mean, they come in different flavors.
Oh, that's
like
Kimberly.
caramel,
Kimberly, are
peanut
M&Ms
butter.
different flavors?
They come in different flavors, but they're all the same.
She
It's
says
just
they're all the
different
same.
colors.
Kimberly says they're all the same. Sheila wasn't sure. She gave me a look like I don't know about that. Skittles are different. Yes. So that is
Yeah.
our trivia. I think we should move on to something more important. What do you think?
Yep.
Why don't you tell the millions of people what we're going to talk about today?
Dear millions of people, we're going to talk about the topic of responsibility.
Yes, the
And while
responsibility.
this seems like a very, what would you call it?
Boring?
Boring, juvenile
It's not boring at all.
topic.
It's definitely not boring.
I mean, we use this word all the time, right? All the time.
I mean, if you're a parent, you do.
So we're very familiar with it. But I think that we kind of need to explore this very familiar word
Yes.
in a more intricate way because this is a topic and a word that
I feel like we're having
I feel like we talk more about it than actually put it into action.
I feel like we're having a crisis today, a responsibility crisis in our culture.
Yeah.
I think that's fair to say. Literally a responsibility crisis.
Okay, so look
dig
up,
into it a little bit.
like the proper definition of the word responsibility, and let's kind of touch a little bit about what other words are like relatives of that
Relatives. All right. Responsibility, the definition, noun, the state or fact of having a duty to deal with something or having control over someone. The state or fact of being accountable or to blame for something. The opportunity or ability to act independently and make decisions without authorization. A thing that one is required to do as part of their job or legal obligation, like a responsibility.
Yeah, I feel like mostly we associate it with duty, task, function, job, role, place, charge, business, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this really stemmed from us having a discussion about what appears to be literally a responsibility crisis. I feel like we're literally in a responsibility crisis. What do we mean by that? What we mean is that culture has shifted and is in the process of shifting and has been probably for, I don't know, probably a long time, but at least 20 or 30 years away from personal accountability and personal responsibility. Right? Mm-hmm. And that's really what got us talking about this, right?
Right. So we kind of made some notes on areas and issues like in our area and space here in the Northwest. What we see is a problem because somebody else wasn't responsible. So if basically we all are responsible for something, some part of us, emotional, physical, all of these different elements of who we are as humans. Yeah. And when we aren't held responsible and made to be responsible, then somebody else has to take responsibility for the lack that that person decided not to have.
So you're saying typically somebody's got to pick up the slack.
Somebody has to pick up the slack. And that's the problem here is that we keep passing the buck to someone else and we don't do what we're supposed to do. We aren't pulling our weight. And so then it dwindles down to very few that have to pull the weight.
Yeah.
And so some of those areas that we have seen, let's see, is homelessness. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking at this problem, how does responsibility kind of go with this?
You mean tying with homelessness?
Mm-hmm.
I think, when we first were talking about this and I started letting my mind go, responsibility, wow, like that is a massive problem. Like, that's why I said crisis. Like, that's a massive problem. I started thinking, which we can dig into and talk about homelessness and things like that, but I started thinking, well, why is it going away? And I feel like it's kind of tied to that whole thing, which we've talked about before, that there's no absolute truth. Because if you remove absolute truth, then am I responsible or not becomes a question instead of an obvious responsibility.
So there's nothing to anchor responsibility to.
Right.
There's no purpose or point.
There's no purpose. If there's not an absolute truth, if I have a truth and you have a different truth, whatever you want and whatever I want, then there's nothing to tie that responsibility to. So then why is there a crisis in truth? Like, we grew up believing that there's only truth. It's either true or it's not true. There's not like a Prudence truth and a Chris truth. There's just like truth. Well, the attack on truth is really coming from the desire to remove God away. Like, if I can remove God, then I can remove truth. And if I get people to believe that there's different truths, then there's no God.
Right, because God is the anchor for truth.
God's the anchor for truth. So really, this lack of responsibility, or kind of a removal of the ownership of responsibility, actually comes back to trying to remove God out of the picture. Right? Mm-hmm. So to bring it back to your question about homelessness, right? So if you think about homelessness, they say, well, there's lots of factors. Okay. So we don't want to talk about the exceptions. So there's some people that are homeless out of no choice of their own. Okay. We're not talking about those. The majority of the homeless situation has to do with a lack of desire to do the work necessary to create a home for yourself or living conditions. Yes, there's drug use, there's mental instability, and there's some people that really just either temporarily or for whatever reason, it's out of their control. But if you take most of that stuff, if you take that stuff aside, most of the homelessness is just a lack of desire to do what it takes to have a home. I'm not saying everybody can have a home, but to have a place to live.
Right.
And that's a responsibility issue. And then the flip side of that coin is people aren't taking responsibility to help people in that situation either. It's like a double-sided issue.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely a complicated one because whenever there's addictions involved, it just becomes way more complicated.
Oh, yeah.
And there's fine lines of enabling and helping.
Right. Right.
So, there's a responsibility for people around people with addictions to possibly try to help encourage them to get help. But then there's also the responsibility of the person to want to help themselves.
Yeah.
So,
and in both cases, it's just kind of progressively grown to be a bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger issue.
yeah.
And culturally, in the cities with the most difficult time with personal accountability and responsibility, it's just like the worst examples of homelessness exist there. Now, again, it's a super complicated topic. So we're not pretending to like be doing the topic of homelessness justice here. It's just a great example on many different sides of the lack of responsibility.
So then other areas that we identified was the topic of abortion, and how abortion is prevalent because people are not being responsible
Yep.
with their bodies.
Right.
And it starts with that.
Yeah, it's another super complicated situation. So there's lack of responsibility from actual women with regards to abortion. There's even a bigger lack of responsibility, in my opinion, from the men that are involved, because somehow it seems like people only think women are involved, but
It takes two to tango.
yeah, it's a dual tango issue. And then there's another one that people rarely are thinking about, which is the responsibility of the church and or parents and or educators to help educate and prepare young people and not young people for the topic around sex and abortion and pregnancy.
And we talked about this more extensively with Joni Shepherd when she was here.
Yeah,
so if
some
you wanna
really good episodes.
have more information on that topic,
Yep.
you can go and find those. I think there's like 3.
Yeah, there's 3 Together We Build episodes specifically on that. And then there's another part of it too, where after a woman has had an abortion or has a baby that was not planned, then there's also the issue of the responsibility around support and help even after the fact too. So there's like the entire topic is surrounded with the issue of responsibility. Honestly, it's prevalent.
Well, and I think that, we don't have to be, a part of something huge in order to take our responsibility levels seriously. And I think especially as believers, we're called to walk in excellence and be a part of building something. Let's see, what did I write here?
Yeah, read what you wrote. It's brilliant. It's brilliant, Prudence.
Yeah, it almost doesn't make sense. We are called as believers to walk in excellence and be a part of building that quality and taking the responsibility we've been given and meeting it head on.
Yeah.
So that's something that we should absolutely start with us. You know, it's already a problem in our culture, but as we're talking specifically, even just to, you know, a believer of sorts, like, are we taking that seriously?
Yeah. I mean, if we just take a step back for a second before we go any further and just look at responsibility for a minute, it seems crazy to me that we actually have to do this, but we really do. Because culturally, you doing okay there with your microphone there, Prudence?
I fixed it.
Good. Nice job. Like it's an issue now, even though it seems, I mean, to some of us, it's going to seem like, what? That's not an issue. It is. It is. Personal responsibility, accountability, things like this. So first of all, I guess we step back and go, is there a biblical precedent for this? And, you know, the answer is obviously yes. There are literally hundreds of verses that either directly talk about responsibility or indirectly talk about responsibility. And then in addition to that, just the way that God's kind of systems and processes are laid out for us as believers all have to do with personal responsibility, like all the way to literally salvation, where you spend eternity. It all has to do with personal responsibility. Everything from train up a child the way that they go to, you know, you're going to have to bear your own load, to pay a person the wages that they're due. Like literally God's economy, God's model has to do with responsibility. And that makes sense. Like we believe he designed every single person with a purpose and a plan. And that in and of itself necessitates responsibility. So if he designed us for a reason and on purpose, not as an accident, then we have a responsibility to fulfill that. Mm-hmm. So if you want to remove God, right, then one of the first things you got to go after is responsibility. You got to say everything happened is just kind of an accident.
Well, the problem is, well, one of the problems that we're seeing today everywhere in our culture. We're seeing this in the church. We're seeing this in, you know, our government, in just everywhere, is that we're all...
It's prevalent.
Oh, well, you will see it in the courts. Everybody wants to shift blame to someone else. Yeah. I spilled the coffee on myself, but I'm going to sue McDonald's for millions of dollars.
Yeah, it's a famous one. Most people know about it.
Because somebody else should be responsible for this.
I'm looking it up.
I mean, just... You have to have intense amounts of insurance for everything these days, because people will not take responsibility for their error.
Yeah, she was awarded a 79-year-old woman.
Process of it, like,
in case you guys, most people know this, but in case you don't, in 1992, a 79-year-old woman, Stella, bought a cup of coffee of takeout coffee at McDonald's drive-thru in Albuquerque, spilled it in her lap. She sued McDonald's, and a jury awarded her nearly $3 million in damages for the burns that she suffered. Typical reaction by most people isn't coffee supposed to be hot? So there's this story is a great example of a series of people trying not to take responsibility. So most people are like, well, this is the woman being ridiculous. But actually, she had to go to the hospital and had third-degree burns on her lap. So it's not totally unreasonable. But there's several things that happened here. First of all, she wasn't being responsible about handling the coffee, and the court proved that. And then the McDonald's workers were not responsible in the way that they handled the coffee because they weren't following procedures, and that's why the coffee was actually boiling when they poured it, which is not how coffee's supposed to be made and not according to McDonald's procedures. And then McDonald's tried to get out of it and cover over the story, which eventually made such bad press for them that they had to pay the lady more than she probably would have been awarded. So it's literally an example of, like, every party involved trying to not take responsibility for their part of the situation.
Exactly. But
craziness.
I mean, it's just like we have so much and so many things that have plugging court today about
Oh yeah.
whose responsibility. It's just, it's insane. It's insane. But it's just worked its way down into just even the small pieces of our culture.
I mean, the statement you made is more than I think most people realize. You said it's plugging our courts. So here's another trivia question. Okay. How many in the U.S., don't look,
Okay.
how many cases are filed each year in trial courts? State and federal.
Oh, I have no idea. 50 million.
100 million
It's crazy.
in state and 400,000 in federal. It's safe to say that that's too many.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It's just, I think that this is one of the things that, especially as our kids have gotten older and are still in like the state of, hey, I need you to do this, 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 and this because I have to be gone today to do all of these other things. And I don't know how many times, I've come home and the stuff isn't done.
Yeah.
And now I have to give them a speech. And the speech goes something
They
like
do love the
this.
speech. They're like, Mom, give us that speech one more time.
No, but I always tell them, I'm like, hey, I have things that I have to do. And when I ask you to do these really simple tasks, you're helping me do my tasks. If you don't do your job, then I can't do my job. And I need you to not be in a place anymore where I'm babysitting you on this. You
Yeah.
have to grow up. You can't just ignore this because you're not helping me do what I need to do and feel good about leaving you in this position.
Yeah.
So, and there's, this thing in my head where it's like, how many times do I have to go through this?
Yeah.
But at some point, I'm not going to have that speech again with
Well,
them.
you're hoping.
I'm hoping.
You're
But
hoping.
typically, that is how it goes,
I mean, 1 Corinthians 3:11, right? When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. And I think that's not happening as much as it's supposed to.
No, it's not. It's not. So we have to, we need to help our kids understand this concept. And, if you have to stay camped out on some nitpicky thing until they get the concept,
You mean
then
as
that's
a
what
parent?
you have to do as
You
a
mean as a
parent.
yeah.
But we want to be able to produce adults that see they're responsible for something. And
Right.
when they
That's
don't
right.
do what they have been tasked to do, and might I say, with excellence,
Right.
somebody loses out.
Right. Yeah.
Somebody loses out.
I think that's a really important thing. That is part of the Prudence speech that she gives to the children, where it's like, hey, this stuff still has to happen. So when you don't do your part, somebody else has to do your part and their part. But I feel like that's one of the things that's missing. So there's this meme. I should try and find it and then put it like in the show right here, where it's the Not My Job award, and they got like the dead possum that the pavement line painted right over.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that.
Like
They don't even bother to get
look,
out.
I know you didn't want to scrape that thing off the road, but now the line goes over it. I should find that right now while we're looking. But I feel like that is a thing. That is a good picture of the way most people are thinking now. Well, it's not my job, or I was told. We manage events here at Eagle Mountain, And I always have this little speech where I say, hey, during this event, I don't want to hear the phrase, I was told. Because that whole I was told phrase, usually, sometimes it's totally reasonable, but most of the time when someone's saying that, they're trying to say, this wasn't my job. They're trying to circumvent having responsibility. Now, a lot of times things weren't their responsibility, but they saw an issue and then they didn't deal with it, and then they, or whatever, and they are saying, well, I was told this or I was told that, as an excuse for not handling something.
Yeah.
And it makes me crazy.
Well, and if we cannot do the small tasks and conquer the levels that we are on, we can't be trusted to go to newer things, to bigger things.
Yep.
You don't get that. And, you know, you don't really need a college degree anymore to step up in your job and to get promoted. Exactly.
This one's even
you
better
just have
with
to,
the tree
yeah,
branch.
but they can't see that.
I'm going to show them.
Okay.
I'm going to put these in there. See the tree branch?
Yeah, it's nuts. So what I'm saying is that before I
Sorry.
was interrupted.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's just, this is a great picture.
I don't know what I was saying. I honestly don't know what I was saying.
Well, I was told. That's not my job.
Oh, but I mean, more than just like in your job situation, let's talk about our responsibility to manage ourselves in our own emotional growth, in our own spiritual growth. What responsibility do we have as individuals to take charge of that?
Yeah.
You need a babysitter to do that. You know, we need to stop this nonsense.
Yep.
As like scripture says, grow up out of having to have someone breathe down your neck to make sure that you do your job, but not just do your job, do it with excellence.
Yeah.
And then go the extra mile.
I mean, it's not like this is a new problem, right? Like, this goes all the way back to the garden, right? The man said, the woman who you gave me, she gave me the fruit.
Yeah, so Adam
And I ate
started this blame game. Well, and then Eve blamed the serpent, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
this is
literally
totally
like,
not my job.
Nobody wants to take responsibility for
It's not new. It's definitely
for
not
their
a new.
thing.
It's not a new thing.
Yeah. So, you know, and we've all been in these cases where we have been on the losing end because somebody didn't show up for their responsibility. All of us have been in those situations somehow, you know, and it's more ramped up since these, you know, even these COVID years where people won't come into work.
Right.
We can't find enough help. You know, you show up to the restaurant and it's closed because people don't show up for their jobs.
Yeah. Yep.
And so it's become even more prevalent, even recently. But, you know, you need to think about like what happens when even in just the smallest tasks. And I mean, I'm thinking of even just like church culture, when you're a volunteer and you say, yeah, I'm going to do this job. And then you just don't show up.
Yeah.
Or like
Which,
something
believe it or
better
not, happens a lot, actually.
Something better comes along or something. We're not talking about an emergency here. We're talking about I've just got offered something better.
Yeah.
Or I don't feel like it. Or this or this or this. Somebody has to fill that job or people lose out.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're literally past taking your responsibility and giving it to somebody else.
Yeah.
When it was yours.
Let's dig into that a little bit. Let's talk specifically about the churches that we're attending. Like, I'm assuming that most people that are listening to this aren't staff at a church, but they attend one. I think most of the people that listen to this show aren't staff but attend churches. So like you're going to some kind of a facility, some kind of an organization, and they're providing a bunch of services, whether it's a service on Sunday or maybe they have lots of stuff. Maybe it's a larger church and they do all kinds of stuff. That is run by a small, typically, okay, maybe there's some exceptions, but typically a small handful of paid staff, but everyone else that works together to make that happen in most cases is a volunteer. So like without each of those people taking personal responsibility, that doesn't happen. And then what is your part as a consumer of those services of responsibility?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Are we just consumers or are we contributors? Because being a contributor is a part of every human's responsibility.
Galatians
In whatever
6:2.
sphere you are in and walking around in, you are responsible for that space and how you are contributing to whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, like Galatians 6:2, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Like it's literally in Galatians, the way that they're talking about it there is as it's fulfilling the law of Christ. So that's a very strong call to be doing your part, each person carrying their part.
Well, and I mean, we have a huge problem in today's, and I'll just speak on behalf of like the church culture, is that nobody wants to commit to anything.
Yeah.
And if they do commit, it's halfway. It feels like, there's
Yes.
a problem with commitment. And I think that's just a little branch off responsibility,
Oh, yeah.
is just feeling like they don't want to commit.
Oh, it's 100%.
Because something better might come up
Yep.
and this and this and this. But, we all hands have to be on deck.
Right.
That's
right.
You
That is
can't-
absolutely right.
You can't just come in and sit and consume your whole life.
Yeah.
I mean, there might be times for rest.
Oh, there's times for
seasons
rest.
for
You have to have
rest.
balance, but the people that are working can't rest unless everyone's also carrying their load.
Yeah.
Right?
So every single person needs to say, what is my responsibility? How can I step up? How can I, and this can be in giving, this can be in service. This, I mean, maybe a combination of both would be nice.
For sure.
Just, it doesn't mean that you have to, contribute every single Sunday.
Right.
But what is it? The work is enormous and the workers are light. There's a verse that relates to that.
The work is enormous.
I changed it a little bit.
The need is great and the workers are few. Is that how
Yeah,
it
that
goes?
isn't the same thing either.
That's
I'll
not-
think of it when I'm not thinking
So,
of it.
it's something about the workers are few. Yeah, scripture talks about this in a pretty serious way. Like in James 4:17, it says, so whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin. Like that's pretty significant. That's a pretty serious charge when you know you're really supposed to help with something or do something or fill some role and then you don't do it.
Well, and here's
It's
the
pretty
thing
serious.
is that, when we shirk our responsibilities, if you're in like a volunteer situation, let's just even start with that. But any situation and you shirk your responsibilities, like what another problem.
The harvest is great.
Yes,
But the laborers
another
are few.
problem is that you're basically you're putting the leadership and the people that are running the situation into a hard position because are we just not supposed to say anything?
Well, what
Are
do you
we,
mean? What
like-
do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Well, like let's just say the way that somebody is living, maybe choosing sin
Okay.
to spoil the way that they're living,
Okay.
and or they have a responsibility and they just don't show up, or they just this or this or this, and it's a volunteer situation.
Right.
But they what did I write? They hold the leaders hostage and manipulate the leaders who bring truth and hold people accountable to their actions. So modern day Christians call accountability religious.
Yeah, that's the
And
trendy thing now.
reject anyone who tells them that they are wrong.
Yeah, that's the trendy thing now is anytime that somebody is trying to toe the line on righteousness or responsibility or truth is almost always labeled religious. Now, there is a real serious problem in the church of people being religious, and Jesus railed against the Pharisees for this. Like, he just went from town to town railing on the Pharisees. So I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but it's now become a real handy label.
It's the pendulum.
It's a pendulum swing.
It's swung, and now we're over here, and now you cannot tell anybody that they're wrong.
Right.
Or that they need to change their ways.
Or that they should be responsible or act in a responsible way. To tie it back to this particular topic,
right.
It's become a very easy get out of jail card. It's to point the finger and, cry religion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that needs to stop.
Needs to stop right now.
It needs to stop.
Yeah. I mean, it's a prevalent issue.
Yeah.
I like the way you wrote this here. Within churches, members want everything for free. They want to be entertained. They don't want to pull their weight, service, and giving. They believe the church exists to feed them. Haven't you heard that like so many times? Oh, well, why are you not going to X church anymore? Well, we just weren't getting fed there.
Mm-hmm. And what is your responsibility in that?
Yeah. I think that there's definitely a time where people need to be fed. And there's definitely a time for rest. And we talked about that a minute ago. That's super important. So the pendulum can swing the other way too. And that is just as unhealthy. But we don't fix that unhealth by thinking this consumerism approach is the answer. It literally is just the opposite side of the wrong thing.
Yeah, totally. Yep. So what did I write here?
Lots of good stuff. Lots of good stuff here, Prudence.
Would a world look like? Well, first of all, let's look at this. Envision a world where everyone at once, all at once, decided to quit paying their bills, going to work, taking care of themselves, doing whatever drug they wanted, whenever they wanted, stealing, taking whatever they wanted. They didn't care for the animals, the land, the helpless babies and children, the sick, the elderly. What if everyone just decided all at once that they just didn't care about anyone except themselves?
I mean, it's getting close to that. It's getting close to that now.
This is the lack of responsibility.
Yeah. Yes.
And slipping into this mindset that the only thing that matters is what makes me happy.
Yeah, it makes me feel good.
What makes me feel good. And thinking only inside this bubble.
So there's we don't have tons of time left, but there's a flip side to this real quick too, is that this is where culture is going, by the way. This is absolutely where culture is heading, like a speeding bullet train. That, just so you know, especially for the young people, that is a really powerful competitive advantage. Like the jobs, the leadership, the position, the opportunity, it's going to go to the people that do take responsibility, because it is so rare. Like I think about our daughter, our oldest daughter. She is like had promotion after promotion after promotion at her job just because she works hard. Like she's smart.
That's what I was going to say.
Oh.
Is that you don't even need a college degree to go up in your job anymore. Hardly.
Because it's so hard to find hard workers that take responsibility.
Yeah. You just get someone that takes their responsibility seriously.
Yeah.
And works hard and is willing to grow, and they will move up.
Yeah, like she she's very smart. But I feel like the reason that she's gotten 7 promotions in 1 year is just because she's working hard. Like she works hard, and that's so rare that they see that, and it's a big competitive advantage against the other workers, which is super sad. I mean, it's great for her, but it's sad that is such a powerful advantage, and it's because this is a widespread cultural problem. It is a crisis of responsibility. I really believe we are living in a crisis for truth and responsibility. I mean, they're separate episodes. We can talk about truth at a different time, but people are desperate to be out from under responsibility for their actions, for their choices, for themselves. They want their college debt paid off. They want free health care. They want free everything.
But somebody has to be responsible to pay for that.
I mean, obviously,
You know,
somebody has to be responsible
But
for
somebody
it.
else has to be responsible for paying for that.
Yes, somebody else. Somebody that's like a short white guy should be the one that pays for everything.
So what would it look like if we all understood what our responsibility was and if we all showed up in those areas?
Okay,
of
so let's back
responsibility?
up a second. So the first picture you painted was, what would it look like if everyone stopped taking responsibility fully?
Right. Because if you can do it, certainly I can do it.
Yes. So I think we're seeing what that looks like because society and culture are headed in that direction. So imagine for a second if it went all the way. Like, it's bad. It's super bad. Like, just imagine for 1 minute if everybody didn't go to work for 1 week. Like, no garbage, no electricity,
I think we got no water. A little bit of a taste of that during the COVID shutdown.
It would be, but still, like, things still happened. Like, there was still water.
Right.
Like for example, this is super crazy. LA County or LA Basin area, the whole area of Los Angeles. I have to look up the exact thing, but it's something like this. I think it's like, 4 days. 4 days, if they were cut off, hundreds of thousands of people would die. And that's just from the water not being able to be treated. Like, it's that big of a deal. So if everybody just universally stopped doing their jobs for 1 week, it would be catastrophic. But that's where we're headed. So then, Prudence, you're saying, okay, what's the flip side of that? What would it look like if everyone fully took responsibility for the areas of influence, the areas of responsibility, the areas their job, everybody fully did.
Let's start with our families. Mm-hmm. How many fathers aren't stepping up to the plate and taking responsibility?
Right.
Husbands.
Right.
Wives. Mothers.
Children.
Well, and we have to start with these guys because the children will see and they will follow examples. You don't have a leg to stand on if you are a hypocrite.
Right.
They can see right through that.
So you're saying, okay, what bad news if everybody stopped all at once, but what would it look like if everybody did take responsibility?
Yeah.
It would be crazy.
It would be.
What if every father, every mother, every grandparent, every politician, every business owner, every employee took full responsibility of what they've been given charge over? Mm-hmm. I mean, it would be overnight, the world would be transformed.
Yeah.
If every leader, president, I mean, just think about that for a minute.
Yes. What a wonderful world.
It would be overnight, the world would be miraculously shifted.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at the heart of almost every issue is someone not taking responsibility. So,
or using resources irresponsibly.
Ooh, that's
really good.
Because
let's we just talk about the government and how they use our resources irresponsibly.
Yes, it is crazy when you start going down that rabbit trail.
Mm-hmm. But this all starts a lot while we're being raised, how we were raised, how we're raising our kids, because we are training the future government leaders. So if we can't train our kids how to use the family resources responsibly, they're not going to know how to do that when they're an adult.
That's right.
And if they get put into a place of power, guess what?
Not going to go good.
Not going to go well.
Not going to go good. Okay, so let's pivot that in 4 minutes and 20 seconds into what should people do about this? Because when you start talking about, the presidents of countries, taking their responsibility, the CEOs of companies, it's real easy to go, yeah, that's right. Those guys. But let's bring this down to a practical level. We talked about responsibility for 45 minutes. What's the takeaway?
The takeaway is to maybe take a look at everything, every area that you're involved with,
Yeah.
that you have influence in, that you have any responsibility in. Are you, and looking at all of those areas and saying, am I doing the very best that I can do here? And am I at a place where I'm doing well enough that I can take on more responsibility and go up levels?
Or should I fix this stuff first?
Or do I need to fix this first before I can do that? Obviously.
Yeah. So I feel like start with relationships. Ask yourself, what are the relationships that you are not taking the responsibility you've given in those relationships appropriately? Start with relationships. And like, what are the conversations you need to have? What are the people that you need to invest in? Who are the people that you have responsibility over, that you should be helping, supporting, mentoring? What are the people that you need to apologize to? So start with relationships, and then I think move from that to the volunteer, the support financially for the areas that you're responsible for. So like in your church, like, are you taking responsibility? Because those guys run on volunteers. Those guys run on donations a lot of the time. And then obviously, like in your place of work, what areas what areas that you have influence over are you not taking fully being responsible for? And I would hesitate to say, let me make a list of all the people that are not being responsible towards me. And I would really be careful not to do that. And instead, first, look at the areas in your own life.
Well, and I almost would say that perhaps the first, like if you were to ask me, the first area would to be, are you being responsible with your own emotional health and healing?
I don't even know why I missed that. That is the first thing.
Because
that's
if
for sure
you
the
don't
first.
start with a very clear, cleaned off slate of health on yourself, you cannot go into all of these different areas. Put the mask on first.
That's right.
That's right. You have to make sure that you're in order. And that, I think, is where people can't get past.
Yeah.
And this is why all of these other areas don't flourish.
So you're saying step one
is yourself.
Is yourself. Are you being responsible with yourself, your relationship with the Lord, your mental state, your ability to handle the things that you've already taken on? Step two, the relationships around you. Step three, the organization, the job, the nonprofit, the church. Like, are you being responsible and caring for those things? And if you're like trying to do that, like, I love the way you said that, Prudence. If you're trying to do that, like I'm trying to support this or support that or support this, but you have not fixed your own relationships and the relationships of the people around you, you're like, great job supporting such and such organization. Meanwhile, you've neglected this, this, and this, and this. I mean, I'm being facetious. Obviously, not a great job. Yep,
exactly. So that's just a little bit of our thoughts on responsibility.
Yeah, and I think as we end this, as we're wrapping this up here, let's go back to what you said earlier. Imagine what it would look like if all at once, like I super snap my fingers, boop, and literally everybody just started taking responsibility for things we just said, for themselves, their own relationship, fixing themselves, their relationship with the Lord, those people around them that they have care over or are influencing or influenced by, and then the roles that they have in their own companies, organizations. Just imagine what that would be like.
One person who isn't taking responsibility for anything makes a huge impact in the world. They do. Everywhere they go, they're leaving carnage and wreckage. Somebody else has to pick up the trash that they're leaving.
That's right.
But on the flip side, a responsible person that does things with takes their responsibility seriously and does it with excellence because that is how the Lord would have them live, and they know it and they love it. They love to live that way.
Yeah.
They are also impacting the world.
Yeah.
In a huge way.
In a huge way. And I would just say, don't underestimate both sides of that coin.
Yep.
Don't underestimate the impact the lack of taking responsibility has, and don't underestimate the impact that you can have by really taking on responsibility. Not others, but your own. It can be absolutely profound. So I think ultimately we want this to be encouraging. When this is a time to pivot if you need to pivot. And I would just encourage you to do that. Because again, if you just need any motivation, just take 1 minute and just close your eyes, imagine a world what it would look like if everybody did this. And then now you got to go do your part and share this podcast with 100 other people. That's part of your responsibility. Now, definitely thank you for spending some time with us today. Like, share, subscribe, help us get this out there. Let us know what you thought about this. If you think that we're crazy fools, put that in the comments. Let us know. If you think that's amazing, put that in the comments. Let us know. Take some time to share this with others. Also, let us know things that you'd like us to dig into, topics that you think are important, and we will see you on the next one.